You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest options platforms in the world. MIAX is now trading options on the SPIKES Volatility Index, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction for confident trading, all for competitive exchange fees. It's time to make a change and give yourself an edge with SPIKES. Learn more about SPIKES at www.miaxoptions.com/spikes. Options involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for information purposes only and are not intended to provide and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means it is Friday. It is 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. That means it is time once again for Volatility Views for the 400th time coming at you as the premier program for volatility traders. My name is Mark Longo. Very pleased to be joined on this auspicious occasion. 400 episodes. It's crazy. It's been a historic month pretty much here on the network. We just did Option Block 900 a few weeks back, which is insane that show is approaching 1,000 episodes. We had just did TWIFO 200 yesterday. It seems like a new show to me. That's 4 years old now on that one as well. Time flies when you're talking options, and now VolViews 400. Getting ahead of myself. How time flies from the early primordial ooze days of this show. I remember it well with our friends over there in Volex land and others recording in exotic locations like down at the Boca Raton croquet courts during FIA and all that other fun stuff. If you're curious, listeners, this fine program premiered way back August 16th of 2011. Just let that ruminate in your brain for a little bit, listeners. August 16th of 2011. What a difference a few years, shall we say, makes here. The vol landscape has changed markedly. We've seen the addition of new products, obviously, like spikes and others. We've seen the VIX complex and the volatility complex itself really just grow and explode. From a time when we launched this show, it was really aimed squarely at the only people who could understand it, which were the institutional guys who were trading, vol upstairs. It was a very, very targeted audience because a lot of retail didn't really know what VIX was, didn't really know anything about volatility. It hadn't really gotten out there. The futures had been live for a bit, and then the options had been live, of course. And so they were starting to grow. The universe was growing, I should say, but it hadn't really hit that kind of apex yet. And, of course, we saw the addition of other products over that period. We saw things like XIV come into prominence and VXX and everything like that, and all of the legion of ETPs that have exploded therein, SVXY, UVXY, all these other products. And as that universe grew, it continued as a bit of a feedback loop, keep growing the mothership. And we saw volume and volatility in the core volatility products continue to grow, and the audience for this program continue to grow and expand. And we've loved every single one of you who've joined us over these past 400 now episodes. And nigh on a decade. We're coming up there, listeners. In August, it'll be 9 years, which is crazy, terrifying to say that out loud. The show was actually born, I recall it was born in series. One of the few good things to come out of series was this show. So there you go. Tip of the hat to the old series there. And joining me once again, it wouldn't be Evolve U's 400 episode spectacular without the guy who's been pretty much one of my cohorts for most, if not all, these episodes. We've had, obviously, peppering in the Rock Lobster and a few others, but the Greasy Meatball has been there. Trying to refresh my memory, Mr. Meatball. Were you on episode 1?
I was on episode 1, yes. So I've been around since the beginning. We needed somebody to pepper the show with some excitement. I'm the sizzle to this show's steak. I'm the horseradish to this show's cocktail sauce and shrimp. That's always been my role, and one that I have relished, if you will.
You're just full. That's why I said when I brought you on the show, I want a legion of condiment puns, and you have not disappointed us, sir. So well done. But ruminate on that for a second. Freaking 400 episodes, nearly 9 years of that show, sir. What a crazy time this has been.
I mean, and think about it, right? Like, so we have seen some, like, every time we think, wow, this is some of the nuttier stuff that we've seen. In the 9-year period, we've talked about, wow, I can't believe that we're talking about a 9 VIX, that we're talking about volatility this incredibly low. This is where implied volatility is. We've gone from that to, wow, I can't believe that we're talking about a record. I can't believe that, things are nuts. We were here for the, not 08, but we were here for the 11, the 11 downgrade. We were on air. I remember doing that show from Michigan. And we have been on air for the VIX being back in the 80s. We've been on air for the VIX being in the 9s, and everywhere in between. You're right. We've seen the blow up of XIV. We've seen someone come in and try and replace it. We've seen TVIX explode higher twice and collapse twice. It's when it comes to vol, we've done it all.
I like that. A good tagline for the show. When it comes to vol, we've done it all. But you're right. We have seen TVIX pretty much implode twice over the entirety of that run. Once through weird machinations of fund flows and once through just its own issues therein. If you're curious, by the way, listeners, back on that time frame, because you're right, we launched the show. It's somewhat auspicious timing. It was coming right into the heels of all that madness that unfolded with the downgrade there in 2011. It doesn't seem like that was that long ago, yet that was coming up 9 years ago, which is crazy. If you're curious, on the 15th of August, was right around the time that we launched this program here. I think it went live. I think we recorded that day, might have went live on the network that next day on the 16th. But it was the VIX opened at a 34 3/4, got as high as about 45.5, and as low as a 30.8. So huge range intraday out there back in 2011. And again, reflecting kind of what the heck was going on in that time frame there. Just a lot of madness. So we launched this show at a very auspicious moment for volatility, perhaps an inauspicious moment for the market, but an interesting time nonetheless. And we are also joined today, holding down the MIAX hot seat. By the way, I should mention we're going to be joined by a lot of special guests throughout the show, a lot of virtual cameos. A lot of people wanted to chime in and be part of VolViews 400. We're going to pepper those throughout the show as well. It's going to be a fun surprise for me. I'm not even not sure what we have queued up where, so it's kind of fun. But also joining us, holding down the MIAX hot seat today, Mr. Tom JARCK, the volatility product specialist over there at MIAX. Tom, welcome back to the program. I know you haven't been on for the full 409 decade-long run of this program, sir, but how does it feel to be part of a auspicious moment like the 400th episode spectacular, sir?
Well, it's feeling pretty good. When I got the invite, I couldn't turn it down. So, yeah, looking forward to a good show. I've been, only a recent guest the last few months, but, liking it a lot. It's been good. I've got a lot of positive feedback from, a lot of folks out there, a lot of your listeners. So it's good. Yeah, looking forward to a good show.
And do you recall what you were doing back on August 16th of 2011, sir? What you were trading or where you were around that time heading into all the crazy meltdown that we saw therein?
Yeah, what college weren't you like at like Miami University partying, watching
me?
Maurice
you got the wrong
and all that. Go on.
That's not me. So 2011 August, I was actually between roles. I had left Citigroup to join Deutsche Bank, and I was on the I was on the beach, like literally on the beach that week, the August. And I remember, that month was when there was a big S&P downgrade of the U.S. debt, and there was some crazy moves, and I just remember hearing some horror stories, and I remember, and I started right after Labor Day weekend, so I kind of missed all the that little bit of craziness. Sometimes
it's good to mix the craziness. You're not going to miss, though, listeners, the Volatility Review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, welcome to the Volatility Review, the portion of the show where we look back on the week that was and indeed still is, of vol trading and trending and unusual activity and all those fun perspectives. Before we get to that, I do believe we have our first special guest / cameo joining us on the program. Let's see who it is.
Hello, this is Brian Overby, the options guy with Ally Invest, and I wanted to give a shout out to Mark Longo and the Options Insider team for their 400th episode of Volatility Views. That is unprecedented, much like the times we are in now. So here's congratulations to the 400th episode, and here's to the next 400 episodes going forward.
Look at that. Mr. Overby, the options guy himself, chiming in here. He's been on Vol Views last year, towards the end of last year, I believe he was on most recently. I'll have to get him back on again, see what's cooking in the retail space. Brian, of course, over there at Ally. You can catch him every week on the network if you want a good fix there. Options Playbook Radio. I haven't seen the numbers. I know a lot of you have been. A show like that, a weekly kind of educational and actionable idea show. You folks are sinking your teeth into that one. So thank you, Brian, for your well wishes here on this fun program. Got more of those joining us throughout the show here. And speaking of the show, coming into showtime, we are seeing an interesting one. It's been one of those, it sounds like a cliche at this point. We repeat every week. It's an interesting week, but it is yet again another kind of weird. In fact, the notes this week almost read kind of identical to last week. It's kind of another mixed end to another kind of weird mixed week. We saw the bull get out there early and try to get out to it and try to rally, and it did for a while. Then we saw some other things start to conspire, maybe potentially derail it a little bit. And coming into today, it seemed like we were going to be on the sell-off end again. Of course, the perhaps resumption of some tensions with us in China over Hong Kong. Over there, a lot to blame. Of course, the optimism was on the vaccine front, so a lot of push and pull going on, various factors out there in the broad economy. So as a result, come into today, yet another mixed day. We have the Dow off ever so slightly, about 0.1%. The S&P up ever so slightly, about 0.15, easy for me to say. And NASDAQ leading the charge, about 0.33% out there. In the old NASDAQ land, gold, bit of a lift. Crude taking a bit of a break out there. Still north of the 30 handle right now in WTI, 33. If you want a good breakdown on that, check out, of course, TWIFO 200 that we just did yesterday. It's crazy. Anniversary's flying hot and heavy. Vol also flying hot and heavy, mostly to the downside right now. We had spikes, was at about 30, coming into showtime, puts it down about 3 points. Now it's about 29.5, so about 3.5 points down from our last show. Our old friend, the VIX cash itself, coming into showtime was at about 29.5. That puts it down right about 3 points. And now it's about 28.75, so down about another 3/4 of a point actually from there. So about 3 3/4 points from where it was this time last week. So Vol coming in a little bit. We'll have to fast forward to the crystal ball, see who had those levels. I don't think anyone did. And our old friend VVIX still kind of hovering around that 120 level. It was north of that last week. Now it's back down to about almost exactly 120, down about 16 points from where it was this time last show. Mr. Meatball, sir, interesting week. Yet another mixed, kind of funky week out there on the old street. What's catching your eye in the vol space this week, sir?
I think it's interesting that we continue to see VIX extremely firm. Today aside, we're seeing realized volatility is holding at around 25% or so over the last 20 days. It's kind of stopped falling. A comment that's interesting is today is the first day where, COVID-19 was not the lead story, right? This Hong Kong stuff is a totally new wrinkle, and we need to start considering whether, this has kind of opened a Chinese Pandora's box in terms of all kinds of after effects of the backlash, whether there's going to be Chinese backlash or, what the country of China is going to do over the coming period. Because, the Hang Seng was down 5.5%. That is nothing to joke about, and is if that continues, is going to spill into markets. So I think that's a really interesting developing story, along with kind of how the economy recovers here over the next few weeks. I think is really going to determine what the rest of the summer looks like.
Yeah, when I heard they were off 5% overseas, I assumed we were going to have a much sharper response here on the street. And we were off, about 0.5%, maybe a little more, depending on which index you were looking at. But it certainly wasn't the multi-point drubbing that we saw overseas out there. And again, this has been kind of the other shoe that's lurking out there alongside the pandemic, obviously, is this, how is our relationship with China evolving as a result? And that's kind of been when we saw that bit of a détente perhaps there. We saw that lending fuel to the rally when we saw perhaps Trump throwing more irons on the fire of potential resumption of a trade war. We saw the market selling off. Now, of course, these hostilities over Hong Kong could be yet another iron in that potential trade war, perhaps worse type of fire out there in terms of will there be sanctions? Will there be some other elements taken there beyond just what we just did not too long ago with the trade war? Tom, same question for you. An interesting week, kind of a weird week. Certainly not an August of 2011 week out there. It's a weird. You see these conflicting narratives, and we have seen for some time, the bull wants to get out, the bull wants to run, and yet there's some other factors lingering out there. Is this vaccine really all it's cracked up to be? What the heck's going on with China? What has been lighting up your tape this past week, sir?
The week started out with that, obviously the enormous bid after the, which I think was a lot of that was deemed from the, Powell 60 Minutes presentation. And just the Fed's unlimited capacity to lend money. One thing I saw interesting today is just read an article like 20 minutes ago. Very funny. It was about how since everybody's working from home now, everybody's becoming day traders, and you're seeing more and more, retail investors becoming more of a presence in the markets, and downloading books, listening to webinars, listening to your show, I'm sure. So that was quite interesting to me, because I just hope everybody's doing their proper homework before they're jumping into the vol space. But so the volumes, it still seems pretty big. But when I talk to a lot of it, I think is just trading electronically, and the high touch folks I kind of chat with a little bit don't seem to be feeling the big volumes as much. There was some big prints that went up last week, actually on the MIAX. That was quite interesting. But yeah, so it's this Hong Kong thing, the delisting of Chinese equities, it's definitely something to be on the radar, and that's vol still has a pretty decent bid to it, so it's and I think one other thing I'm looking at is the term structure. Russell 2000 still very bid on the short dated versus like S&P. S&P is contango short dated and backwardation long dated versus the Russell is in complete backwardation. So it's something to be aware of and just look at. The small caps, as we talked about before, can move pretty good if they want to.
Yeah, you mentioned that big print last week. You'll be happy to know Mr. Schwartz, Henry Schwartz, the Flow Master, was in the hot seat last week. He did an able job breaking down that condor. It was pretty sizable. XLF condor, I think it was like 430,000 contracts. That was an enormous print. I know it's outside the vol space, but obviously it went up on your venue there, Mr. Tom. Henry did a good job breaking it down. Any extra color you want to add to that one and how that went up, sir?
Did he? He, well, not. I mean, I don't know much color other than I did see Henry's his post, and I don't have much more to add to it because it's literally just some there was a print went up on Monday last week and then another one on Wednesday, so those were obviously very much welcomed, but I don't really know too much on that I could comment on.
Wait, I'm being notified we are being joined by another special guest. Let's see who's joining us next on the Vol Views 400 Spectacular.
Hey, Mark, this is Bill Valentine of Valentine Ventures and the Commodore Volatility Funds. Congratulations on 400 episodes. Some people said you'd never make it past 390, but I always knew you had it in you. Hey, keep up the good work at this important time. The volatility discussion must go on. Good job, buddy.
Wow, look at that. Mr. Valentine from the Commodore Fund. Haven't heard from him in a while. He was infamous for coming on our show, that epic breakdown. We had an epic back and forth. If you ever want to hear, listeners, the most in-depth discussion you will ever hear on what causes VXX erosion, go back. I'll have to find the episodes that Bill was on for that. It's probably the most in-depth discussion anyone has ever had on that topic. Is it the roll yield? Is it other things? There were some interesting nuances and discussions there. But I'm glad to hear from Bill. I know he had, I believe, some health problems recently, which I was sad to hear about. But it sounds like he's doing well. Mark, are you still in touch with Mr. Bill? Are you happy to hear him on the show here?
Yeah, he and I did just catch up. And, yeah, it was good to hear from him. I hear he's doing really well, and he's happy. And he's out and about in Bend, Oregon, doing his bendiest. Don't
we all wish we were out and about in Bend, Oregon? Just, the other volatility mecca. You get outside Chicago and everyone thinks, the next place, Bend, Oregon. But thanks for that, Bill. Glad to hear you're doing well out there. Let's see what else is doing well. Let's see if the VIX futures curve is doing well. Come into Showtime, we saw it was an interesting shape. It has moved a wee bit since then, but come into Showtime, we did have the cash right around 29.5. Obviously, we're shy of that now by about 0.75 of a point. And we saw about almost 1.5 points of premium for that June future. Remember, May future off the board. June future, 1.5 points about. We saw the July future, not quite 2 points, about 1.8 point premium out there. Mr. Meatball, anything catching your eye out there in terms of the evolution of our old friend, the VIX futures term structure, sir?
Yeah, we're still in a contango, but they've been really firm. The curve basically is up on the week while maintaining shape, even as the VIX is pretty flat. So if you look, the low for VXX was, I believe Friday, and VXX is still trading higher than it was on Monday. So you have the VIX futures have found a bid. I saw a bunch of funny tweets. When is the vol going to come out of the long weekend? When's the vol going to come out of the weekend? It looks like they took the vol out of the long weekend like last week, which is incredible if you think about it, right? They had the stones to sell Memorial Day vol in this kind of market over a week before Memorial Day actually took place. So we're going to come in on, and they're taking a little bit more out right now, right? We're watching the vol come out a little bit as we're flat on the day. But, there is we're in a contango, but we've got a kind of weird, crazy peak election fear priced in, which I don't fully understand. And vol is up on the week in the futures.
Yeah, that's always a question we get heading into these long holiday weekends. When are they going to come for it? When are they going to come for it? The notion that they could even contemplate doing so last week. If you think about all the other things that are afoot out there right now that we talk about every week, we just talked about, with the trade war, the ongoing issues with China, of course, the pandemic is by no means a done deal. This vaccine is still in the testing phase. We don't know what the results will be. So the notion that they would come for this, it's kind of reminds me, it's kind of analogous to when we saw that telephone poll ahead of Brexit, and they thought, one poll said it's not going to happen, so let's just fade all of this vol. It's not quite that aggressive, but it does remind me that perhaps a little bit of whistling past the graveyard going on out in the vols. But why would we possibly want to have a little vol in our back pockets over, I don't know, a long weekend when literally anything can happen and has happened routinely over the course of the past few months? If you need a better example of literal weekend risk than the past few months, I don't know what you're paying attention to. So if you're just crushing all your vol heading into a weekend like this, that to me is just crazy. I know, Tom, you spend a lot of time on the institutional desks. Can you fancy in a million years putting your previous hat on right now, coming in and hammering away at the vol over a week ahead of a long weekend, given everything else that's going on out there right now, sir?
Yeah, it seems like it does seem a little bit aggressive, but as I've said before, I think there's still some, there's still that look for some yield, and whether people are just going to jump into equities, which they've been. It seems to be quieting down a little bit, so I think there's still a little bit of need for some selling. And you do have implied correlation still quite elevated, meaning index vols are rich. So there's still I feel like there's still some pressure that needs to come in terms of in vol. But I will say that it seems like the skew is remaining well bid. So there's definitely heightened anxiety for another gap lower, and I see some folks talking about strategies like owning at the money vol and being long vol, owning at the money and selling some downsides to help finance it a little bit, because there is that kind of memory of 2018 December when the market sold off and we had skew get pretty much hammered. So there's some thought of that too. But yeah, it's pretty amazing to discount the in this environment to just be so I guess risk averse.
Like I said, whistling past the graveyard. Speaking of well bid, you know what else is well bid and indeed bid up? Our cameo spots on VolViews 400. Let's see who they've got in store for us next.
Hello, Options Insider Radio Network. This is Andrew Giovinazzi, the Rock Lobster from OptionPit.com, congratulating you on 400 episodes of VolViews. I knew you back when just a small radio network, not the giant conglomerate you are, but now you have spikes, you have vol, you have all things volatility on VolViews, and I congratulate you. And, of course, we know the show is rigged because Longo always wins the crystal ball. But with that, enjoy your success, and I'll see you on the next episode of VolViews.
I don't know who the heck that guy was. Who let that guy on the show? Craziness. Taking umbrage in his guest cameo spot. That was, of course, the Rock Lobster. What do you have to say for your counterpart there, Mr. Meatball? Taking umbrage in his guest spot.
Oh, you tell that jerk to shut up and get over it. No, I'm kidding. He's great. Lucky, best decision I ever made. Second best decision I ever made. First best was agreeing to do a Option Insider radio show. Second best was working with Andrew.
You might want to squeeze your wife somewhere in there just on the off chance that she listens to this and then decides to take a little umbrage of her own. But yeah, I'll happily take second to your other life decisions you have made out there. Let's see what decisions people are making in VIX options land. Right, let's get all vol options. Let's talk when spikes land, breaking down the top spots in spikes. OI looking pretty similar to last week. The big positions still are the June 95s, followed by the July 24th. Interesting strikes. Then the June 75s, and then my favorite still open. Been open for a while now, the July pars. Bloomberg went nuts for that 100 lot of VIX pars not too long ago. They forgot the 50 lot that went up of July pars in spikes. I just love it. And they're still open. So our friend there keeping hope alive. Let's move on out to VIX options land. Not a heck of a lot going on, even though it is kind of a weird mixed day. Net movement, we're not seeing a lot as a result. So VIX kind of coming off, even though the ADV did tick up ever so slightly from this last week to this week. We saw it was about 320,000 contracts last week. This week's about 356. So has ticked up about 36,000 contracts. So a little bit more interest. But otherwise, we are coming into that kind of usually trade war and pandemic aside, which are two big things to put aside, usually this is the time of year where we start to see that seasonal lull in volatility. So these numbers, this ADV is perhaps not exactly surprising. When you mix in what else is going on, maybe it is a little bit surprising. Today, right around 120,000 contracts on the tape so far. So right around a third of today's volume. Again, not a rock'em sock'em robots day. A lot of contracts have come off the tape in VIX options land. The OI is about 3 million contracts lighter than it was last week, so that's not exactly surprising. In fact, it only cost you about 79,000 contracts to break into the top 10 in VIX land right now. That gets you to the June 45s. Number 8, we got the June 40s, 83,000. That was number 9, 83,000. Number 8 is 88,000. A lot of 8s floating around out there. For the July 32 halves, number 7, 89,000 of the June 17 puts. Number 6, 91,000 of the June 30 puts, as the Irish like to say. Number 5, about 93,000 of the June 37 halves. Number 5, 99,000 of the June 35 calls. Number 4 is 99. Number 3 is $1.13. I think these numbers are off. That should be 5. We've got a couple extras in here. There we go. Someone gave me the top 11. We're going to do a top 11 here instead today. Number 4 we got here is 99,000 of the June 35s. Number 3, $1.13 of the July 28 calls. Numero dos here, $1.15 of the June 30s. And then really number 2, but it's not number 1 on our list, $1.18 of the June 15 puts, because the real number 1 in our top 11, let's mix it up, 400 episodes, let's go top 11. You got to go bigger than top 10. Number 1 then in our top 11 would be 125,000 of the June 50 calls, 5 O's. Interesting that that's still the number 1 with the bullet. Also, that only cost you 125,000 to top the list in VIX land right now. Shows you how light things are out there. About 6, not even 6.5, about 6.4 million contracts open in VIX land, about 3.4 million on the calls, and about almost exactly 3 million over there on the puts. That's down about exactly 3 million from last show. So a lot rolled off the board over the past week, and not a lot of volume to really replace it. But Mr. Meatball, before we keep going, any interesting paper come across your radar in this otherwise quiet week this week, sir, in VIX options land?
There was a weird, funny little, 2 nickel stupid that looks like went up today, way out of the money on June 2nd in the weekly rundown, if you want to do the weekly rundown. So there was some, it looks like they did some sort of
Oh, wait, you want to do a weekly rundown for old time's sake? Hold on for 1 second, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown.
All right, now it's official. Now you may commence.
There you go. So it looks like for the June 2nd contract, somebody bought the 80 and 85 calls for a nickel, 12,500 times each. So a weird little stupid for a dime. And, that's kind of interesting paper. Other than that, a lot of mixed bag, decently active puts still trading. I find it interesting that the downside of the curve is more bid than usual. It's a much flatter curve than normal, and that just shows you that there's a lot of people playing both sides.
Since we did just invoke Russell's Weekly Rundown, I do believe we have another special guest cameo joining us here on VolViews 400.
Hey, this is Russell Rhodes, just sending congrats for the 400th VolView episodes. My goodness, that's almost 8 years. This show would be doing second grade from home at this point. But in all seriousness, I appreciate the time that I got to spend as a pretty frequent host. Look forward to any time you'll have me back on as a guest host. And if I do become a host again, everybody should be aware that that just means VIX won't go above 12 for a year or two. And I'll keep saying it's going to 20. But again, congrats to both Mark and Gene for hitting a really big milestone.
Yes, our frequent co-host for many years there, holding down what was the SIBO hot seat at the time, Mr. Rose. Been back a few times since then. He's been wearing multiple hats, and I do believe he's listening live. He's chiming in. I'm sure he feels jealous once he hears that Russell's Weekly Rundown music chime in. By the way, a smart man. He knows where his bread is buttered. He also thanked our producer, Gene. He knows who actually books the show, listeners, so he's angling to get himself back on. A very smart man. Mr. Meatball there, what do you think of our guest cameo from our old friend, the one who never saw a VIX he didn't want to buy, a.k.a. Mr. Rhodes, sir?
No, that's it's good to hear that good old voice from the distance. I do notice that he started to do a little more work with doing the Vol show on SEBO TV. I've been trying to get into his class at Loyola to learn all about volatility and differential equations. And lo and behold, every time I go to register, it's completely full up. So it's really weird. But yeah, every time I want to take a class with him, somehow I'm unable to do it. It's really, really odd. But maybe someday.
You shouldn't use that market option pit email, because I think he has blacklisted you from the Loyola subscriber list. Let's see if people are blacklisting some VIX options out there today. Like I said, not a ton on the tape. About $1.20 coming into, as of a few minutes ago, actually coming into this segment. And as Mark mentioned, the biggest print is this funky, whatever the hell it is, vertical 80-85 out here, about 13,000 times, which is, that's a bit of a weird flyer. 5 handles, the whole thing's kind of weird. Yesterday was a little bit more active day, a little bit north of 250,000 contracts on the tape. The biggest print was actually 50K of the July 22 puts out there and 30,000 of the July 25 puts. So maybe a bit of a funky ratio going up there. Wednesday, almost 500,000 on the tape, about 454,000 contracts. The big print, 38,000 of the June 50s and about 31,000 of the AUG 30 puts. So that 50 strike, obviously we talked about the OI and top positions earlier. That 50 strike remains in the imagination, let alone the 80 and 85 strikes out there. So some interesting flyers perhaps lurking out there in the VIX term structure. Also about 27,000 of the June 23 puts. So it's not all weird, crazy upside, listeners. There is downside lighting it up out there as well. Tuesday was the most active day of the week, about almost 550,000 contracts on the tape. The big print was the May 30 puts, about 38,000 and almost 38,000 as well of the May 28 puts. So perhaps a bit of a tight ratio there, perhaps rolling down from the 30 puts to the 28 puts. The OI, the volume, at least they're pretty similar. The May 27's also getting about 31,000. Get a little upside in there as well. The May 35's doing about 30,000 contracts. So interesting spread of activity there on, what was that? That was on Tuesday. And then on Monday, 390,000 was the paper on Monday. The big print, about 23,000 of the May 27 puts and 16,000 of the May 28 puts, so maybe a bit of a ratio roll or adjustment. Again, it's pretty tight, only one strike. Usually like to see people rolling a little bit more than that, give themselves a couple more strikes to go. But c'est la vie. Also, not to be outdone for funky strikes by the 80-85 going up today. We see about 15,000 of the June 120 calls going up on Monday. Again, those look like maybe someone getting the hell out of Dodge on those. Either way, 120. I thought the pars were optimistic. 120 is interesting. Also worth noting, the May 80-85 going up 13,000 times on Monday as well. So it was June. So maybe someone's got an axe to grind on those two strikes and is keeping the party alive, taking it from May on Monday and putting it up again today in June. Either way, 80-85, getting some weird love out there. You know what else keeps getting the weird love is VolViews 400. Let's see who else is joining us here in our special guest rotating cavalcade of stars here.
Wow, has it really been 400 episodes of Volatility Views? Amazing. This is David Lincoln from the Short Vol Show live on YouTube. Congrats to Mark and Company on your 400th episode of Volatility Views. I count on Volatility Views for my insider VIX info, and I wouldn't miss an episode every week. The show provides something for everyone, from beginners to market insiders. I never miss an episode. May there be 400 more.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Lincoln. He of Short Vol infamy over there. He had VIX Crush. Before that was a Short Vol show. He's been on the show fairly recently, actually, out there. Check him out on YouTube if you haven't already. And I like his Twitter handle just because it's got the Benny Hill, the Benny Hill icon out there, which is good. Thank you. I feel like I'm I'm the captain of the Love Boat in the 70s. I'm introducing all the cavalcade of guest stars. Where's Sherman Helmsley? Where's all these guys coming on? That's a dated reference if ever there was. And Mr. Meatball, what do you think of our ever-growing list of special guest contributors and well-wishers today, sir?
With every passing guest, the list gets worse and worse. I just got to say.
Look at you slamming Mr. Famous Dave out there.
No, I'm kidding. No. I love Dave. He's a good guy, good trader. Everyone should listen to his show too. but not until after you've already listened to every other show on the Options Insider Radio Network. But no, he's a good guy, good trader, worth a listen. Very insightful. Likes to short vol. I don't know if you knew that.
I have heard a thing or two. Well, keep your powder dry on these, Mr. Meatball, because I do know what the next one up is in a little bit, and I think this one's going to bring a smile to your face. It's a twofer I think you're going to like. But first, before we get to that, let's get on out to the product that Dave loves to fade, which is VXX. Actually, he's more of like an SVXY, UVXY guy, but he does like to sling a little VXX on occasion as well. Coming in today, it's a little bit shy of 34.5, about 34.4, so it puts it down a little over 3 handles from last show. So we said it before, that nice healthy contango out there in the VIX futures usually contributes to a little bit of nice erosion out there in the VXX product, and we're seeing exactly that right now out there. Today, come into showtime, we saw not quite 100,000 contracts on the tape, about 90,000, and the ADV is a little bit shy of 250,000 out there as well. Let's break down the top positions, because we're talking about our friend here in number 1 for a while. It seems like he's finally got a bit of a smile on his face. Let's do numbers. I'll do a quick top 10. Number 10, 39,000 of the June 35 puts. Number 9, 41, almost 42,000 of the June 25 calls. Number 8, 44,000 of the June 30 puts. Number 7, 50K of the June 25 puts. A lot of puts on the list. About 80-20 puts to calls, listeners. Number 6, 54,000 of the June 16 puts. Number 5, also 54,000 of the June 23 puts. Number 4, 55, almost 56,000 of the June 18 puts. Number 3, 57,600 of the June 20 puts. Number 2, our other call on the list, 63,000 of the June 31 calls. And number 1 with a bullet yet again this week. This guy's been rolling for a while. He's been trying to wait for the strike to come in. He danced with it a couple of times and it bounced away. This week, at least, seemed like he's finally got a smile on his face. We're talking about the July 35 puts, 103,000 open out there. Total of not quite 2.2 million contracts open out there on VXX land. Not surprisingly, puts outnumbering calls by about 1.5 or so to 1 out there. Mr. Meatball, anything catching your eye now that we got nice, healthy contango back? Are your crazes in the pit chat, they slinging themselves in VXX again, sir?
Yeah, we've been looking at VXX, we've been looking at UVXY, and also some pair trades with the S&P 500. I don't know if we were planning on talking SPX options, but a 15,000 lot plus of the June 32.5 calls, 3,250 calls, just traded today. So that is a big, sizable upside bet, and they've been buying all day. VXX, the open interest continues to climb in long-dated options. Not a huge surprise with us back in a contango, and these guys relatively expensive. There's some real opportunity that we're going through on the Volatility Edge, which is my amazing vol trading product.
You got the Vol Edge, you got the Legion, you got the Trading Club, you got the Pit. I can't keep track of all the myriad new offerings over there in Option Pit land, listeners. Check it out for yourselves. OptionPit.com. Little early plug there for him. Speaking of plugs, we got some earnings stuff to break down. You guys check it out for yourselves. TheOptionsInsider.com is the place to go. Click on the earnings move results reports. Got Take Two, a bunch of others out there. Check out the earnings season report as well. Our friends over there at ORAT's really crunching some interesting numbers, and so far, at least, underperformance is kind of the name of the game, at least for this season so far. A couple of weeks bucked that trend, including 1 week, week 4, that was exactly in line with the straddle, exactly at 100%, which is almost unheard of. So check out that for yourself if you want all that good data. The price, you can't argue with the price, completely free. TheOptionsinsider.com. I want to make sure we get some of you folks on for this 400th episode spectacular. Without further ado, let's head on into the Volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the Volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options. or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, everybody. For the 400th time, we are checking in on your volatility voicemail. Let me have to run a little long today. You guys have a lot of thoughts. All you listeners want to get in on the 400th episode. Spectacular as well. Like Mac. Mac chiming in says, sending you well wishes on your epic 400th episode. This is my favorite podcast. Well, thank you. You know what, Mac? Don't tell everybody else. but you're my favorite listener. Thanks to you and everyone else who's sending all that love. Keep it going. Glad we can keep you guys educated, informed, hopefully a little sane in these somewhat insane times out there. We were just talking about him, Mr. Rhodes. He's listening live. Obviously, he wanted to hear his little cameo there. He chimed in to say he'll never escape that music. Yes, he will not. You will never escape your Russell's Weekly Rundown. It will be linked to you forever. On your tombstone, they will have the words and indeed the music playing in the background of Russell's Weekly Rundown. Glad he could join us there, virtually listening in the live. I think the Flowmaster's floating around in there as well. All right, let's see. Who else? Let's see. Oh, we got another chat question. This comes from MJAFARI. He's commenting on VXN, which is, of course, the VIX of the NASDAQ, which is another VIX that's lurking around out there. We don't really talk about it that often here on the show because not a lot of trading going on really with it, at least from our perspective on the options side. But still, interesting one. He chimes in and says, VXN of the last 30 days has encompassed the forward 30 days for the last 14 days. Let me read that again. As VXN of the last 30 days has encompassed the forward 30 days for the last 14 days, meaning that the forward daily NDX moves did not exceed what the average back 30 days said the daily moves would be. These are meaty sentences to deconstruct here. This has happened 5 times, according to MJAFARI, since 2007. Given this, do you think a 30-day at-the-money straddle in NASDAQ would be wise? Worth mentioning that the last 2 times this happened, it also lasted 14 days. Yeah, we don't get a chance to really parse. Obviously, we talk a lot about small cap vol on TWIFO because the Russell has been blowing up, and NASDAQ is commensurately volatile, yet because we don't see the same universe of tradable products on the NASDAQ vol space, we don't really get a chance to sink our teeth into this. Tom, I know you focus a lot on S&P vol right now, but when you hung your hat on the institutional side, did you ever trade a lot of NASDAQ vol? And if so, what do you think of MJAFARI's thoughts here on a 30-day straddle flyer here in the NASDAQ, sir?
I think the NASDAQ over the years I've been trading has changed so much. The dynamics, the makeup of the index. Company used to be more of a tech kind of a little more of a evolving companies, and now it's all mature companies. So it's a very different index than it was in the past. So it's very, very much in touch with S&P. Almost in lockstep as far as the moves go. I don't really have a strong view on the vol of it, but in general, I still think there's a little bit of too much risk premium in the vol curves in vols right now. So I would be a little bit more in the on the bear camp of that vol. But as far as all the other metrics that your listener was back testing and checking out, I've never looked at before, so I can't really attest to those metrics. But he seems to have an affiliation for the number 14. But yeah, I'll try to take a look as we're talking here, and I'll see if I can come up with something. But
yeah, Mr. Meatball, we talk NASDAQ in general, but we don't talk a lot about the trading opportunities therein because, like I said, there aren't a lot of direct volatility vehicles. Obviously, he's talking about just trading a straight up NASDAQ straddle, which is a little bit of a different beast. Is this a product you like looking at, and do you ever look at perhaps NASDAQ straddles with your crazies in the pit chat, sir?
Well, one of the things to recognize, and we've talked about this, is that the NASDAQ isn't really even the NASDAQ anymore. It is, 5 stocks, if you want to count the conjoined Google twins. And if you want to go crazy, you can add Intel and NVIDIA now. And, with those 7 stocks, you recreate about 70% of the index. Or not 70, almost 60% of the index. And so it used to be a combination of biotech, technology, and a little bit of, shall we say, a little bit of like older school banking, things like that. It is now essentially an index on Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, the Googles, and to a lesser extent, Facebook, NVIDIA, and Intel. You're not really... So the vol that you are looking at historically is not the vol that you're trading. And that's something that you really have to take in mind. Indexes always tend to morph over time as industries change. But the speed with which we have seen technology and primarily really 5 stocks take off from the rest of the market is astounding. People look at these all time, the NASDAQ's up on the year, blah, blah, blah. Most of the market still sucks. There are really only about, 10 stocks that have truly driven the S&P 500 higher. And that is, something that people need to be aware of as they're kind of contemplating straddle trading. Are you better off doing that, or are you better off just going straight into Apple and Microsoft and some of those names where you get, true clarity on what you're trying to trade?
Oh, he said he hit a touchstone you've been on for a little bit now, but you're right. I mean, I've said that before on other indices that, the vol universe is much different when the show started than versus what it is now. The context has changed. But you're right. The underlying core consistency of those indices are markedly different. I always joke about the tech-heavy NASDAQ, but now it literally is. Those handful of names are the lion's share of all the performance you're seeing out there. And you strip those out, it's a very different beast. Might be an interesting analysis to do MJAFARI, maybe just taking like a bit of a basket straddle of those 5 top names versus the NDX. Maybe that might be a little bit more bang for your buck out there. It might work. Don't apologize for asking a very verbose question. It's okay. We like those. All right, next up, let's see. Mad Men. I guess he's plural, or maybe he just likes the show. He says, loving the show. Well, there you go. Thanks, you Mad Men. He says, I can't believe I didn't know about it before. Shame on me. Yes, shame on you. It's been going since August 16th, 2011. I'm just kidding. We see new people flocking in all the time. It's been growing pretty much since it launched back in 2011. As the vol space has grown, as the network has grown, vol views has grown along with it. So there's no shame. Let's go back and check up on the archives. And a lot of good stuff in there for you. He wants to know, Tom, Mr. Rapper Alley, any color on OTC variance or vol trades this week? Are you kind of asking on a rough week there, Mad Men? Not a ton. I don't think lighten it up. But, Tom, you're my go-to OTC color guy. I know there's not a lot really lighting it up. Anything of any note you want to share here with Mad Men, sir? Plural?
Yeah, I got to admit, I'm a little out of touch with the OTC market this week. I haven't really, been in touch with a lot of the, my contacts, and but I have heard, some people looking at this. I mentioned it before a little bit. The Russell forward vol versus SPX forward variance versus forward variance. Just playing those 2-term structures. Obviously, that vol spread is very wide between Russell and S&P right now, but for good reason, as it is realizing. Not a ton of color to add there this week. I apologize. I'll do some more homework next time before I come on the show. But but I do think other people that are playing like skew trades versus at the money vol would be buying straddles on index vanilla form and might be selling some variants to take advantage of that rich skew. But that's kind of all I have on that.
We kind of run up against it. We got some epic questions in here, like Damien wants to know about the volatility decay of levered ETFs. We'll get to that on a future show. Got a little more time. T-Lance wants to get into deep on OIV and OVX. Let's wrap it up with some quick ones here, because we do have to get into the the crystal ball there as well. Plus, we have some more guest stars joining us here. Let's see. Francine just saying, good job on Volatility Views 400. Hard to believe the show has been around for so long. Yeah, I've been on it for that entirety of that time, Francine. It's hard for me to believe it's been around for coming up on 9 years. Crazy town. Find another podcast of any type that's been around that long, let alone in the vol space, and certainly not at all. And in the financial space, forget about it. There's a reason why we say we're the home of the options podcast. We've been doing that for quite a while. Back to the pre-iPhone days of 2006 when we were putting all this stuff together. And then we launched it, of course, officially back in January of 2007. Vol Views coming along a few years later there. D. Hardy, we'll wrap it up with this one. D. Hardy just saying, wants to know, did you, quote, borrow the episode spectaculars from The Simpsons? Yes, guilty as charged. Yes, I did. I did borrow that from the, I think it was 101st episode spectacular on there. So that these episode spectaculars are a little bit of an homage to the early and indeed the good days of The Simpsons. Now it's time for us to get on to the good part of the show. It's all good, but this is even better. It is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
before we break down our hits or perhaps misses for the crystal ball for this week, Mr. Meatball, this one's going to bring a smile to your face. We're going back now in the Wayback Machine for our next set of well-wishers, congratulatory guest stars, all the way back to episode 1 of Volatility Views. We got a twofer that I know, Mr. Meatball, will bring a smile to your face.
So Don Schlesinger here, and congratulations to everyone on Volatility Views for a landmark 400th episode. Having been there for episode number 1 and having had the pleasure of doing about the first 100 or so, I am really very proud of everybody involved with the show, that you've now done 300 more and that you've reached this tremendous landmark in the history of the show. Congratulations, and may you have 400 more.
That's great. And I'm Bob Kraus, and I'm the CEO of Demand Derivatives, and we're kind of the predecessor of VolX and VolViews. And Mark, you've done a tremendous job. I haven't listened to all 400. I certainly listened to the first 100 and then a whole bunch of the other 300. But it's really great, and I really loved it. Just the one other thing is we've expanded our reach, and instead of just trying to come out with a volatility product, we're actually starting a futures exchange and a clearinghouse, and we've opened up our crowdfunding to potential investors. So just come to demandderivatives.com and let's be a part of it together.
That was a fun one. Those are our original co-stars, the folks who got this show off the ground. If you like the VolViews music, they chose it. It's, of course, Bob Kraus and the short vol goat himself, the Blackjack Hall of Famer, Mr. Don Schlesinger. I haven't heard Don's dulcet tones on the network. That had to bring a smile to your face, Mr. Meatball. Otherwise, I think you're dead at heart, sir.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just a little disappointed in teach us about how all the problems with implied volatility, and he didn't say his catchphrase, which was, there is vol that should be sold, or options that should be sold, and options that should not be sold. When I found out you're talking to him, I was asking him of what kind of options we saw in late February. I was wondering if you had an answer for that. But that makes me happy. Good guys.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. His catchphrase is infamous. I did a much deeper chat with them earlier this week, listeners, kind of the VolViews 400 Spectacular, kind of just cooked up all this other catching up with great people in the vol space and people reaching out to us. I got a chance to catch up with them. They are indeed now part of Demand Derivatives. Check out the chat I did with them earlier this week, posted it all on the show. I did get Don to restate his infamous catchphrase. He actually corrected me on it, which is just pure Don. I loved it. All of it was great. And, of course, you can find out what they're doing. You can actually be a part of it. You can actually get in the crowdfunding aspect yourself and get a piece of a vol exchange now, not just a product, but an exchange and a clearinghouse, a whole bunch of stuff out there as well. We got some listeners clearly remember Don's mantra. We got Hawkeye in the chat saying, buy not, sell or sell not. There is no buy. Yes, he is very much the short vol Yoda out there. Options should be sold or not sold, never bought. That is his mantra. But check out the conversation I had with Bob and Don. Is fantastic. Check out some of the early episodes with them on there as well. Some great ones. Me and Don sitting at the croquet courts there in scenic Boca Raton, Florida during FIA. Some of my favorite memories of Volatility Views going back nearly 9 years. If you're going to ask me where I rank this week's crystal ball amongst my favorite memories of Volatility Views, probably not going to be that high. Coming into the end of the show here, let's see. Spikes is at about a 29.30, and VIX Cash is a little bit shy of the 29 handle itself, about right around 28 3/4 or so. So that puts, let's see, Mr. Meatball actually the quote-unquote closest. He's within 5 handles. He was 33 1/3. Then it was our guest from last week, the Flowmaster. He did a double guess of 35 for the VIX Cash, which puts him about 6 handles and change away, and 36 for Spikes. So he's about 6 handles and change away there. And I was I was playing the Russell Rhodes role last week, a rare moment of upside there from me at 37.25. So I'm not even in the conversation out there. So all that means, Tom, since we all screwed the pooch last week, you get the choice as the guest. You weren't on last week, so you didn't have an opportunity to lose. Would you like to go first or pick someone else to go first, Tom?
No, I'll go first. So I'm still in my little I'm not there yet where we're going to start seeing the big moves again, but I do think it's going to come at some point, but not yet. So I'm going to go in the lower end again, 27.84 on the VIX or Spike, whatever.
27.84, so a little bit lower, not quite 2 points lower, about a point and a half or so lower, maybe a little more than where we are right now. Interesting stuff. Mr. Meatball, you were a distant second, but less distant than me, so you get to go next, sir.
I'm going to go with, I think we're going to see VIX over 35 next week, maybe 40, but we're going to settle right about where we are, and I'm going to go with 29.29.
So exactly where Spikes is right now, exactly at 29. So it'll be a net unched, boring, quiet week. Remember, listeners, we do have the holiday week or weekday, I should say, on Monday there, so no trading there on Monday. So bear that in mind as you're thinking about what's going on the vol space, and of course for your trading this week as well. I've been doing this for a little bit now, but it has worked out until it didn't. But of course, even today though, coming into the end of the show, we did see the markets getting a little spooked and starting to sell off, and then kind of as they are wont to do, shrugging it off yet again. There, the S&P and NASDAQ, of course, up on the day. Now NASDAQ, a.k.a. 5 to 7 stocks. So this China thing, perhaps much ado about nothing, or perhaps not. Of course, there is this ongoing optimism over the vaccine as well, and how that will play out. We'll have results coming up, not for this next week. So we won't know the answer there. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this China vol is going to linger perhaps a little bit. Maybe the other shoe has not. If you start seeing some very active protests over there in Hong Kong again, I think that might translate into a little bit more vol in the space. And unlike the Meatball, I think it might stay around a little bit. So I'm going to say a little bit north of where we are right now. I'm going to say 32.35. All right. That's going to do it for this epic 400th episode spectacular that we purloined shamelessly from The Simpsons, as our listener pointed out there. I forgot their name. I'll have to give them credit for it. But before we go, first off, before I even do that, I want to thank everyone who joined us virtually today to chime in and congratulate us and just be a part of Vol Views 400. This show has encompassed 400 episodes. So many different people have been on the show over the span of the past few years. So getting them all on would be a challenge, but I want to thank all of you who participated on this show in some capacity over the past 9 years. It's been a joy. And of course, all of you who listen, you guys are the reason we do this and keep doing this and keep cranking away week after week. It's for you guys out there. So glad to see that you're enjoying it. All right, let's go back around the horn. Let's start with Tom, sir. If folks are intrigued by perhaps massive condors in MIAX land or more up your wheelhouse there, they want to learn more about spikes and what's going on the vol front there in MIAX land, where should they go? What should they do, Tom?
Thanks, Mark. They should go to MIAXoptions.com for the general exchange information, and then you add a /spikes to the end of that, and that gets you to the spikes pages.
There you go. MIAXoptions.com/spikes is the place to go to get all of that sweet, sweet data out there. And, of course, the snazzy little video that explains what the heck spikes is in a couple of minutes. And, of course, links to a fun show like Vol Views, a lot of other fun stuff there. You can find MIAXoptions.com/spikes. Place to go. Now you got time on your hands. Everyone's trading it up. It's a place you might want to go. Mr. Meatball, I also might want to go to the option pit to check out this Legion thing and the trading club and the pit chat. You got so many different irons in the fire. What the heck is going on in option pit, sir?
Yeah, we had somebody ask us, how do I join pit chat? And, so we were excited to speak to that person. Thanks for.
Is that not what it's called? I've always called it that.
Yeah, no, we don't have anything called pit chat.
Yes, I'm glad that I could brand it for you then.
But hey, proof you're sending somebody our way. I'm writing a blog every night that goes out in the morning called, where all I do is talk about volatility. how volatility is trading and what I think of it. So if you want to hear the brilliance that is Mark Sebastian in your mailbox without actually having to hear my actual voice, go to optionpit.com and register for our email list, and you'll get them.
There you go, optionpit.com. If I keep calling it a pit chat, they'll have to eventually call it that as well. So get on over there, ask for the pit chat and the Legion. Get on the mailing list, all the other good stuff they have over there. And of course, check out that conversation I had with Don and Bob this week. I do ask them specifically about their thoughts on the current volatility regime and what we've seen on the vol front since all this madness started unfolding in February. I know a lot of you would want to know their thoughts on that, so I do ask them that at the end of that conversation. So check that one out if you're looking for content in between episodes of Volatility Views. And on behalf of Tom and Shelly and everybody over there, John, everybody over there in MIAX land, and Mr. Meatball, and of course the Rock Lobster who joined us today, everybody over there in Option Pit land, and indeed myself. I thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for sending in so many great questions, some of them denser than others. We love them all. We'll try to get to more of them next week. You guys have a lot of questions. I get it. And we'll see you back here next week for more Volatility Views.
Oh, hold on. Let me turn down my Vol Views podcast. Hey, Mark, it's Henry Schwartz, and I wanted to say congratulations on your 400th episode of Vol Views. I think that you and your team are pretty amazing, and I feel a special connection to you because I can tell that you care about options markets and the activity and volatility as much as I do, and I think that's a pretty great thing. I did a little data digging because that's what I do, and I noticed that since you started talking volatility and launched the show in 2011, you have had about 2,500 days of activity to discuss, which included 1.3 billion contracts trading. This is VIX I'm talking about. 7.3 million individual trades and $147.8 billion worth of premium going up in that market. So I think you do a great job, and I hope to talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest options platforms in the world. MIAX is now trading options on the SPIKES Volatility Index, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction for confident trading, all for competitive exchange fees. It's time to make a change and give yourself an edge with SPIKES. Learn more about SPIKES at www.miaxoptions.com/spikes. Options involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for information purposes only and are not intended to provide and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.